The sun was just beginning to sink behind the hills, casting long shadows across the small, quiet town. Armin walked along the dirt path near the edge of the forest, enjoying the calm after a long day. He liked this time of the evening when the world seemed peaceful, when birds returned to their nests and the soft wind rustled through the trees. Life in his town was never easy. There were old disagreements and rivalries that ran deep, but in these quiet moments he could almost forget them. Almost. As he moved further into the forest, a sudden sharp sound made him pause. It was not the usual sound of leaves or distant birds. It was a cry, a desperate call that made him stop in his tracks. Armin's heart quickened. The voice sounded familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. Without thinking about the risks, he ran toward the noise, moving swiftly through the uneven ground. Branches scratched at his arms and the smell of damp earth filled the air, but he did not care. Something in him knew he had to help. He reached a small clearing and froze for a moment. There, trapped between the low branches of a fallen tree, was a young girl. Her clothes were torn slightly and her face was streaked with tears. She struggled to free herself, her small hands gripping the tree trunk. But the more she struggled, the more trapped she became. Armin could see fear and pain in her eyes. It was Layla, the daughter of the family his own family had been in conflict with for years. He had seen her from a distance many times but never expected to meet her like this. For a moment, he hesitated. Saving her could bring trouble, yet the thought of leaving her there was unbearable. His mind raced. What if someone saw him? What if his family found out? What if he made the situation worse? But all these thoughts were gone the instant he stepped forward. Armin bent down carefully, speaking softly so as not to frighten her further. "Don't worry, I'll help you," he said calmly. Layla looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and fear. She did not say anything at first. She probably expected someone else to come, someone from her family. Or perhaps she thought no one would come at all. Armin reached for the tree trunk, examining how best to lift it without hurting her. His hands were steady, and his movements were careful. Slowly, carefully, he managed to shift the branches enough to create a small opening. Layla wriggled free, shivering from fear and exhaustion. Once she was out, he guided her to a safe spot under the shade of a large tree. She sat on the ground, hugging her knees, trying to catch her breath. Armin handed her a handkerchief he had in his pocket, and she wiped the tears from her face. For a few minutes there was silence. Armin watched her closely, making sure she was not hurt. Thank you," she finally whispered. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "I didn't think anyone would come." Armin smiled faintly, trying to ease her fear. "It's okay, you're safe now. I'm not going to let anything happen to you." She looked at him curiously. Why are you helping me? You know who my family is." He hesitated, knowing this was an important question. "I know," he said carefully, "but it doesn't matter right now. Right now, you need help, and I'm helping you. That's all that matters." Layla studied him for a moment, her eyes searching for any hint of trickery, but all she found was honesty. Slowly she nodded, a little relief washing over her. Armin helped her to her feet and they began to walk toward the edge of the forest together. The sun was lower now, and the forest seemed quieter, almost protective. Armin kept talking, trying to distract her from her fear, telling her small stories about the trees, the birds, and the town nearby. Layla started to relax, listening to his calm voice, feeling a strange sense of safety despite the danger that surrounded them. As they walked, Armin thought about the consequences of what he was doing. He knew his family would not approve if they ever found out he had helped Layla. There were unspoken rules, old grudges, and expectations he was supposed to follow. But at that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was a young girl's safety. He realized that sometimes courage wasn't about fighting or proving anything. It was about doing the right thing, even if it meant risking trouble. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, Layla's legs were tired, and her steps slowed. Armin supported her, holding her gently by the elbow. She glanced at him and gave a small, shy smile. "I don't know your name," she said. "Armin," he replied. "And you?" "Layla," she said quietly. "Layla Rashid." They stopped for a moment, letting the cool evening breeze wash over them. Armin realized he had never seen Layla this close before, not as the daughter of his enemy, but as a person, someone real, someone vulnerable, someone in need of kindness. He felt an unfamiliar connection, something deeper than rivalry or family history. As they walked back toward the town, the first lights of evening appeared in the windows of the houses. Birds chirped their last songs before nightfall, and the air smelled faintly of flowers and wet soil. Layla glanced at Armin again and said, "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," he replied softly. "Just take care of yourself. That's enough." But even as they approached her home, Armin sensed that this encounter would not remain a secret for long. Layla's mother would notice, and the tension between their families might make the situation more complicated than he had imagined. Yet, despite the uncertainty, he felt a quiet pride. He had done what he believed was right, and sometimes that was more important than fear. That evening marked the beginning of a story that neither Armin nor Layla could have predicted. One act of courage and kindness had created a connection that might challenge old rivalries, change perceptions, and eventually alter the course of both families' lives. But for now, it was just a boy and a girl walking home together, sharing silence and small smiles, unaware of how deeply this moment would matter. When Layla reached home, she felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. Her mother, Mariam, was a strong woman, respected and feared in the town for her sharp mind and protective nature. Mariam had always kept a close watch on her daughter, knowing the history between their family and Armin's family. The moment Layla stepped inside, Mariam noticed something unusual in her daughter's expression. Her eyes were wide, her hands trembling slightly. "What happened?" Mariam asked immediately, her voice firm but tinged with worry. Layla hesitated. She wanted to tell the truth, but she also feared the consequences. Finally, she took a deep breath and explained everything: the accident in the forest, the fear, and the stranger who had helped her. Mariam's eyes narrowed as she listened. She knew instantly who the boy was. "You're talking about Armin," she said sharply, her voice steady but filled with a mix of disbelief and anger. Layla nodded slowly. "Yes, Mother. He saved me. He was kind and careful, and he didn't hurt me at all." Mariam's mind raced. She had expected hostility from the boy's family, but she hadn't anticipated his courage or kindness. Part of her wanted to be furious, to scold Layla for ever trusting someone from that family. But another part of her couldn't ignore the reality. Her daughter was safe because of him. "Where is he now?" Mariam asked, her tone softer. Though still serious, Layla shrugged. "He left after making sure I was safe. I think he went back the way he came." Mariam sighed, pacing the small living room. Her thoughts swirled. How much could she trust this boy? Could someone from her family truly believe that a member of their enemy's family could act without hidden motives? Mariam had spent years protecting her daughter, shielding her from danger and the complications of their family's rivalry. Yet now, a boy she barely knew had stepped in and helped. It was both unsettling and impressive. The next day, Mariam decided she needed to meet him. She could not let the situation remain uncertain. She wanted to understand his intentions and ensure that her daughter's safety would never be compromised. She sent a careful message through a mutual acquaintance, asking Armin to come to her home under the guise of a friendly visit. When Armin arrived, Mariam greeted him at the door. Her expression was unreadable, neither welcoming nor hostile, but full of intent. Armin bowed his head slightly, aware of the tension in the room. "Thank you for saving Layla," Mariam said, her voice steady. "I need to know why you did it. Speak honestly." Armin took a deep breath. He had anticipated this moment and knew that honesty was his only path. "I helped her because she needed help," he said simply. "I didn't think about families or rivalries. I just saw someone in danger and did what I felt was right." Miriam studied him carefully. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but experience had taught her to be cautious. "It is not simple," she said softly. "You come from a family that has caused my family trouble for years. How can I trust your actions?" Armin nodded, understanding her concern. "I understand, and I know my actions may seem strange given our family's history. But you don't have to trust me completely right now. Just know that I meant no harm, and I only wanted to help." Miriam considered his words. She had always valued courage and honesty, and despite the bitterness between their families, she could not deny that Armin had shown both. Yet letting him leave immediately felt risky. What if someone from his family interfered? What if he had hidden motives she couldn't see? "I cannot let you leave just yet," Miriam said finally. "You will stay in our house for a while under my supervision until I am certain of your intentions. It may seem strict, but it is necessary. For Layla's safety, and for your own protection." Armin was surprised but did not argue. He understood. In his own way, he respected Miriam's decision. "I will stay," he said calmly. "I will follow your rules." The first few days were awkward. Armin had never spent time in the household of the Rashid family, and the tension was noticeable. Every glance, every word, felt carefully measured. He helped with simple chores, carrying firewood, organizing tools, assisting in the kitchen. Layla watched him with curiosity, noting the way he moved, the patience in his actions, and the quiet kindness that seemed to guide him. Miriam observed everything. She noticed how he treated her daughter, how he listened, and how he approached tasks with care. Slowly, her initial suspicion began to soften. She realized that while their families had a long history of rivalry, Armin's presence was not a threat but perhaps an opportunity. Over the next few days, small conversations began. Armin learned about the daily struggles of the Rashid family, about the sacrifices Miriam had made to ensure Layla had a safe and happy childhood. He listened attentively, asking questions and offering help wherever he could. Miriam, in turn, began to see him not as an enemy, but as a person capable of understanding, empathy, and courage. Layla and Armin shared quiet moments too. They walked in the garden, helped with small tasks, and sometimes simply sat in silence, enjoying each other's company. The fear that had marked their first meeting slowly gave way to trust and familiarity. They were still careful, still aware of the past, but the walls between them began to crumble, brick by brick, through simple acts of kindness and patience. Miriam noticed this bond forming, and she allowed herself a small measure of hope. Perhaps, she thought, this encounter could teach both families something valuable. That people were more than the grudges of the past, that courage, honesty, and compassion could bridge even the deepest divides. Yet, she remained cautious. The past was not easily forgotten, and the town was full of whispers. She could not ignore the potential complications. Armin's stay was a test, a way to see if he was truly trustworthy. But even as she maintained vigilance, she began to recognize the subtle changes his presence brought. A softer tone in Layla's voice, a smile that reached her eyes, a quiet strength that seemed to grow in their home. For Armin, each day was a lesson in patience and humility. He had come to help, but he was learning about trust, family, and the quiet strength it took to prove oneself. He realized that sometimes heroism was not about grand gestures, but about being consistent, being honest, and showing care when it was needed most. By the end of the week, Miriam felt a small shift in her perspective. She was still careful, still protective, but she could no longer deny the truth. Armin had shown her family respect, courage, and sincerity. The girl he had saved was safer, calmer, and happier because of him, and that alone was proof enough that he was not an ordinary stranger. Days turned into a week, and Armin continued to stay in Miriam's household under her careful supervision. At first, every action he took was observed, every word he spoke measured. Miriam watched him closely, analyzing his behavior, trying to understand whether he was truly trustworthy. Armin, aware of the scrutiny, remained patient and humble. He did not complain or argue. Instead, he focused on helping wherever he could, whether it was carrying water, assisting in the kitchen, or running small errands in the town. Layla, meanwhile, was growing more comfortable around him. The initial fear and hesitation had slowly faded, replaced by curiosity and a quiet admiration for his kind nature. She observed how he treated people in the town with respect, how he helped the elderly without being asked, and how he always seemed to act with honesty. It surprised her. Someone from the family that had caused her family trouble could be so gentle, so caring. One morning, Miriam asked Armand to accompany her to the market to pick up supplies for the household. Walking through the crowded streets, Armand noticed the wary glances people gave him. It was clear that many still remembered the rivalry between the families. But he did not let it bother him. Instead, he focused on assisting Miriam, carrying the heavier baskets and keeping a polite distance from those who stared. Miriam noticed this and felt a small measure of respect for his patience and composure. During these trips, conversations began to flow more freely. Miriam asked Armand about his own life, about his family, and about the challenges he faced growing up. He spoke honestly, sharing small details about his struggles, his ambitions, and the lessons he had learned about integrity and courage. Miriam listened carefully, occasionally nodding in understanding. She realized that while their families' histories were complicated, Armand himself was not the enemy she had feared. At home, the bond between Armand and Layla deepened further. They spent quiet afternoons in the garden, tending to the small plants Miriam had grown. Armand showed Layla how to care for the herbs and flowers, explaining their uses and sharing small stories about the plants. Layla listened intently, asking questions and occasionally laughing at his gentle jokes. The sound of her laughter filled the house, and Miriam found herself smiling despite her usual caution. Evenings were the quietest time in the house. The sun would set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the family would sit together for dinner. Armand helped prepare the meal, carefully chopping vegetables and stirring sauces, while Layla set the table. Miriam observed them, both noting how naturally Armand interacted with her daughter, and how Layla seemed to relax in his presence. It was a small, simple scene, but it spoke volumes about the trust that was slowly forming. Despite the growing comfort, Miriam remained vigilant. She would sometimes test Armand's honesty with small questions or ask him to complete tasks under her watchful eye. Each time he responded with patience and integrity, never showing frustration or dishonesty. Miriam began to see a pattern. This boy was consistent, reliable, and sincere. Slowly, the walls she had built around her trust started to weaken. One afternoon, Layla accidentally dropped a small vase while watering the flowers, shattering it on the stone floor. Armand immediately rushed to help, carefully picking up the pieces and reassuring her that it was not her fault. "It's okay," he said calmly. "Accidents happen. Don't worry about it." Layla looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and gratitude. Moments like this, Miriam realized, were the true measure of his character, how he acted when no one was watching, how he treated others with kindness and patience. As the days passed, Armand learned more about Miriam's life and the responsibilities she carried as the head of her household. He observed the careful decisions she made, the way she balanced her work, her daughter's needs, and the expectations of the community. He admired her strength and dedication, and often offered assistance without being asked, whether it was carrying firewood, helping repair fences, or running errands in town. Miriam, in turn, began to appreciate his willingness to help, his humility, and the way he respected her authority. Evenings often became a time for quiet reflection. Armand would sit with Layla, sharing stories about his childhood, the lessons he had learned, and the dreams he hoped to achieve. Layla listened, fascinated by his perspective on life. She began to see him not as the son of their family's enemy, but as a person with his own values, dreams, and courage. For Armand, these moments were equally enlightening. He realized that despite the history between their families, there was potential for understanding and friendship if people chose to act with honesty and kindness. One evening, as the family Sat together after dinner, Miriam spoke softly but firmly. "Armin," she said, "I have been watching you closely. I see your sincerity, your patience, and your respect for my daughter. I still have concerns. Our family's history cannot be ignored, but I also see that you are not a threat. I appreciate your presence here and the way you have acted." Armand nodded respectfully, grateful for her acknowledgement. He understood that trust was not given easily, especially in a situation like this. Layla looked at her mother, a small smile on her face. She had witnessed Armand's kindness and courage firsthand and felt a growing admiration for him. "Mother," she said softly, "he really is a good person. I feel safe around him." Miriam's eyes softened, recognizing the truth in her daughter's words. She realized that sometimes, even amidst distrust and rivalry, people could show genuine care and compassion. Days continued to pass, and the bond between Armin and the family grew stronger. He became a part of their daily routine, helping without expectation, listening without judgment, and acting with patience and understanding. Miriam slowly allowed herself to relax, trusting that Armin's intentions were pure. Layla, once hesitant and wary, now laughed freely, shared stories, and found comfort in his presence. Through this time, Armin learned the value of quiet consistency. True courage, he realized, was not always about grand gestures but about small everyday actions, helping someone when they needed it, speaking honestly, and showing kindness without expecting anything in return. Miriam saw this as well, recognizing that actions often spoke louder than words. She began to trust him not because she wanted to, but because he had earned it through patience, integrity, and respect. By the end of part 3, the household had entered a new phase. Suspicion had lessened, trust was growing, and the relationships within the home were slowly transforming. Armin was no longer just a guest under observation. He was becoming a valued presence in their lives, a reminder that courage, kindness, and honesty could bridge even the deepest divides. Even as trust slowly grew within the household, the world outside remained complicated. Armin's presence did not go unnoticed in the town. Rumors began to circulate among neighbors and distant relatives, whispers about a boy from the rival, family staying in Miriam's home helping her daughter. Some people were curious, others suspicious, and a few were openly judgmental. Armin was aware of the murmurs but refused to let them disturb him. He knew that his role was not to impress the town but to continue acting with honesty and integrity. Despite the growing bond with Layla and her mother, challenges arose almost daily. The town was full of reminders of the old rivalry. Certain neighbors avoided eye contact while others questioned Miriam directly about why she allowed him to stay. Miriam's patience and composure were tested constantly. She had to respond to questions carefully, balancing honesty with caution, all while maintaining the trust and comfort of her daughter. One afternoon, a distant relative of Armin's family appeared at the edge of the town. He had heard about Armin's stay with the Rashid family and approached with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Why are you with them?" he asked sharply. "Don't you know what could happen? Our families have never agreed, and yet here you are staying in their home," Armand calmly explained. "I came to help Layla because she needed assistance, that is all. I am not here to start trouble, and I am not here to betray anyone. I am simply doing what is right." The relative frowned, clearly uneasy, but Armin's calm honesty left no room for argument. He knew he had to navigate this carefully. Any misstep could cause problems for both families. Still, he remained focused on his purpose, keeping a steady presence for Layla and Miriam. Inside the home, Miriam faced her own challenges. She had always been protective, but the tension surrounding Armin's stay forced her to reflect on her own decisions. Could she truly trust someone from the rival family? Could she allow herself to let go of old suspicions? Each day, as she observed Armand's consistent behavior, she realized that trust was not given. It was earned, and Armand was earning it with patience, honesty, and respect. Armand, too, felt the pressure of these challenges. He had to constantly remind himself that his actions mattered more than words. Every chore he completed, every errand he ran, Every small act of kindness was an opportunity to show that he could be trusted. He began to understand that courage was not just about facing danger, it was about facing judgment, skepticism, and doubt without losing integrity. One day, while helping Layla with her studies, Armin noticed her concentration falter. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "I'm just worried," Layla admitted. "People are talking about us. Some of them think you're here for the wrong reasons." Armin smiled softly. "Let them talk. What matters is what we know, what we do, and how we treat each other. If I am here to help, that is enough. Nothing anyone says can change that." Layla nodded, feeling comforted by his words. In that moment, she realized that he was more than just a helper. He was a person she could trust, someone whose presence made her feel safer despite the complexities surrounding them. External tensions increased when a small misunderstanding arose in the market. A vendor questioned Armin's presence, implying that he was somehow taking advantage of Miriam's hospitality. Armin handled the situation with calm politeness, explaining clearly why he was there and emphasizing his intentions. Miriam watched silently from a distance, silently approving of the way he conducted himself. She began to see that Armin's character was steady, not swayed by gossip or judgment. Even in the quiet of the home, challenges persisted. Old memories, fears, and doubts surfaced occasionally. Miriam sometimes wondered if she was making the right decision in allowing Armin to stay. Layla sometimes hesitated, worried about what her friends or neighbors might say. Armin, however, remained a source of calm and reassurance, showing through both words and actions that he was committed to doing the right thing. Through these challenges, small victories emerged. The bond between Armin and Layla strengthened. They learned to communicate without fear, to share thoughts honestly, and to support each other in subtle but meaningful ways. Miriam, witnessing these moments, began to allow herself a measure of relief. She realized that trust was not an all-or-nothing choice. It was something that could grow over time with consistent effort and integrity. One evening, after completing chores, Armin and Miriam sat quietly in the garden. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink as the sun set, and the air was filled with the faint scent of flowers. Miriam looked at Armin and spoke softly. "I see how much effort you are putting in. I see that you care about my daughter, and I see that you are honest. That means something more than you realize." Armin nodded respectfully. "Thank you, madam. I only hope to do what is right, and I am grateful for your patience and trust." The small moments continued, helping neighbors, tending to the garden, sharing stories, and completing everyday tasks. Through these acts, Armin demonstrated the strength of his character and slowly dissolved the walls of suspicion that had surrounded him. Miriam realized that sometimes courage was quiet, expressed not in words but in consistent, thoughtful actions that reflected honesty and care. By the end of this period, the household had weathered its first significant challenges. Trust had grown, relationships had deepened, and respect had been earned. Armin's presence had brought both reassurance and understanding, showing that even amidst complicated history and skepticism, integrity, patience, and kindness could make a difference. After weeks of staying in Miriam's household, the day came when the question of departure could no longer be avoided. Armin had proven himself through patience, honesty, and consistent care. Layla had grown fond of him, trusting him completely, and Miriam had observed enough to recognize his sincerity. Yet the idea of letting him leave was not simple. It was a mix of relief, respect, and the lingering caution that came from years of rivalry and worry. One morning, Miriam called Armin to the living room. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow across the room. "Armin," she began, "you have shown great character. You have helped, you have been patient, and you have earned our respect. I believe you mean no harm. It is time for you to return to your own family." Armin bowed his head slightly, grateful for her words. "Thank you, madam. I am honored to have been allowed to stay, and I am grateful for your trust." Layla, standing nearby, felt a mixture of joy and sadness. She had grown attached to Armin, and the thought of him leaving created a strange emptiness, yet she understood that it was part of life. "Will you come back to visit?" she asked. Softly, Armand smiled gently. "I will, whenever I can. This family has become very important to me, and I will always care about you both." The day of his departure was filled with quiet moments. Mariam walked with him to the edge of the town. Where the forest began, she handed him a small bundle of food and supplies for his journey, a gesture of both care and respect. "Take this," she said, "and remember, courage, honesty, and kindness are what matter most in life. Never forget that." Armand accepted, the gift with gratitude, feeling the weight of her words. "I will remember," he said sincerely. "Thank you for everything." As he began to walk toward his home, the town seemed to hold its breath. People who had whispered and doubted now watched silently, seeing the quiet dignity in his departure. It was not a dramatic moment, but a powerful one, filled with respect, trust, and understanding. Layla followed for a few steps, then paused. "Goodbye, Armin," she whispered. "Take care of yourself." He turned, giving her a small wave. "Goodbye, Layla. Be safe and stay strong." Walking away, Armin reflected on the journey. He realized that the experience had taught him more than he could have imagined. Courage was not always about facing danger. It was about acting rightly even when judged, about earning trust through patience, and about showing kindness without expectation. Mariam, watching him leave, felt a sense of pride. She had allowed herself to trust someone from a rival family, and that trust had been validated. The lessons she had hoped to impart to Layla, about courage, integrity, and the importance of judging people by their actions rather than family history, had been realized through Armin's presence. Even after his departure, the bond remained. Armin continued to care for Layla and her family, checking in when possible, offering help from a distance, and maintaining the connection that had been built. Layla, now more confident and independent, carried forward the lessons of trust, understanding, and courage she had learned. The story ended not with conflict or anger, but with respect, hope, and the knowledge that human kindness could bridge even the deepest divides. Armand's actions had transformed relationships, softened hearts, and shown that even in a world marked by history and rivalry, integrity and compassion could prevail. Through this experience, all three learned that real courage lies in choosing trust over suspicion, understanding over prejudice, and kindness over fear. And in that quiet, meaningful way, a simple act of help had changed their lives forever.